I do want to start with a little bit of a confession, because I was one of the pedestrians, the walkers earlier, and walking along Princes Street, I looked to my left and I did that thing that some of you, despite the industry you work in, will judge me for. I did get out my phone, I took a picture of the castle and I Instagrammed it. Because I think, and I'm going to talk quite a lot about this, we are all visitors in this city, because not everybody gets to live in a city quite as fabulous as Edinburgh. And if you live in Edinburgh, you'll know that. If you're not from Edinburgh, I'm sorry to hear that. But it's great to be back. It's a real pleasure to be here in person to support our incredibly important sector. These past 2 years have been the most challenging that our city has experienced since before we had an international festival. So it's nice to be able to see people here today in person to discuss the road ahead for our beautiful capital. It's always risky in this climate to host a major event in person, but that risk has thankfully paid off, and we've all managed to be here and it go ahead. And what a time for the city. Yesterday, our international festival programme launched, one of the best and most ambitious and creative that we've seen, a real bounce back for the festival. And we've seen, and Donald took us through those figures, the stats from the airport and retail and visitor numbers, and indeed our hotels as well. This feels like a time of revival. It's a time to be positive, but we do still need to be cautious. Transmission numbers are still high within our city. People are still ending up in hospital in significant numbers, and the challenges this brings is still with us. So we can't be complacent. Just last month, I presented the council budget, an unusual thing to do for a council leader, but it was because my finance convener had COVID and it hit him quite hard. He was very ill with it. The irony of me presenting the budget was that I also had COVID at that time, but it hit me a little bit less. But it does just articulate some of the ways we're having to manage ourselves, our teams, our organisations differently and be flexible as this virus is still within our community. A little over 2 years ago, I was having crisis meetings about how non-essential services would be shut down, discussions about how to sustain lifeline services in the context of a deadly virus, and meetings about how businesses and key sectors could continue to survive and thrive and function under these conditions. The central driver through all of this was protecting our residents, keeping our NHS able to function and protecting life. But it wasn't the only thing we were worried about in terms of the health and loss of life of our citizens. We were also fearful of losing our city's identity, all the things that make Edinburgh, Edinburgh. And I think we're seeing from the stats that are coming back that Donald took us through, and the optimism, and actually ahead of target. I thought about 40% of businesses were ahead of their expectations. I think we are seeing that Edinburgh identity remain and sustain and thrive. But the diversity and creativity of your sector has absolutely shone through in the last 2 years. It was our hospitality sector giving capacity in areas that desperately needed it, cooking food and changing business models overnight. It was our bars doing things differently, doing takeaway, that was a lifeline. Our cafes and restaurants embracing technology, changing the way we work to serve residents, all these things, all these little moments that created support for our citizens and residents' well-being, and I'm convinced that made a huge difference in keeping our city going. You were there to support Edinburgh through the last 2 years, and I hope the council was there for you as well. We processed almost £300 million in support grants for businesses, supporting local marketing efforts that I'll talk about a little bit further, and engaging with residents to take even more advantage of what we have to offer, waiving fees so that businesses could spill out into the public spaces so that we could deal with some of the restrictions that people had to keep people safe within their hospitality businesses. And I do want to take, while all that was absolutely essential to keep community transmissions as low as possible could, I do want to say thank you and take this opportunity to say thank you to people in the room who have run those businesses, because particularly those that kept their staff on through furlough, particularly those that gave over their business premises for essential activities that were needed in real crisis moments in our city. And thank you to everyone, literally everyone, for their perseverance, for their grit, which has been so important. Edinburgh came together in the last 2 years in a way that it never has before, and we really showed our mettle. Pre-pandemic, as Donald's outlined, 4.9 million visitors a year, 4 million a day, 1.9 billion for our city, our businesses. Tourism and our visitor economy employed 33,000 people in the context of a 525,000 people city. That is a significant figure. Supporting residents in our communities, giving opportunities, upskilling our workforce, attracting talent not only from within our city, but well beyond, in fact, globally as well. And we all know that we are well positioned as a city as an entrance point for international firms and domestic firms looking to go global. And that's what we mean when we say visitor economy. The complex ecosystem of all our sectors, all parts of the economy, taking advantage of the global-facing industries and building even more opportunities for people here in Edinburgh. The visitor economy is a fundamental part of what Edinburgh is and our overall economy. And when we recently reviewed the city's economic strategy, this was a key focus, and we recognise that the visitor economy will play an integral part in our quest for a stronger, greener and fairer city. As Donald mentioned, just before the pandemic, we agreed a new 2030 strategy for how we manage tourism, and it was launched at this event exactly 3 years ago. I'm aging myself. And this strategy set out a clear vision for Edinburgh's tourism sector, which Donald's already outlined, becoming an exemplar and achieving environmentally sustainable urban tourism. How amazing that, unlike the 2008 financial crash, which saw so many people and businesses running towards the same hamster wheel of economic model, we have had none of that this time. Everyone has been willing to keep those North Stars. Well, there's only one North Star, but a North Star of a fairer, more sustainable economy and city. We have not thrown out our ambition as a city. In fact, I think we've got much closer towards it. Focusing on driving tourism growth was in the previous strategy, but our new strategy is about managing the city better for everyone and taking advantage of the opportunities for everyone as a result of that better balance. As I hope I've made clear, we fully understand the importance of the industry to the city's wider economy, and the tourism sector will continue to grow. I'm absolutely sure of that. Our role, all of our role together to manage that return of visitors, to ensure that Edinburgh's built environment, our natural heritage is cherished and cared for, is a fundamental aspect of how this needs to go forward to protect that city's character, the thing that makes people on Princess Street stop and take a moment that's worth sharing. This is a living, working, breathing city. This isn't a museum. It's a thriving, vibrant place where tourism and other aspects of our economic city sit very, very well together. And the strategy focuses on 5 themes, and the aims of them are to nurture and develop. They all work together. There's no people, place, partnership, reputation, and environment. These are all links. These are all absolutely integral to each other and intrinsically dependent on each other if we're to achieve any of them in a meaningful way in a global context. The survey contains a phrase which I do like. Edinburgh is known for many things. Its landmarks, its outstanding heritage, its dramatic topography, its iconic status as a hub of political power, commerce and culture, and as the world's leading festival city. It also is the birthplace of great ideas that have helped transform the world through scientific progress, technological innovation and creative imagination. All of these things help to make Edinburgh a fine place to live, work, invest, study, and of course, visit. I should caveat that, which I really like as a quote, it's the East Coast definition of fine, not fine. You're all with me, yeah? It's fine. Edinburgh is an amazing city, and although we're incredibly proud of our castle in Old Town, we also have other fantastic places to go and visit, and we want our residents and visitors to experience it all. We want our visitors and residents to enjoy the hills and the green belt and the coastline of our blue belt. The beautiful beaches of Portobello and Cramond, explore the town centres in Queensferry and Morningside, and experience the best Instagram pictures anyone will get anywhere with our skyline, and I do have to say places like the shore at the Water of Leith in my own ward as well. While a visitor economy that works for everyone is our collective aim, everyone in the city, the whole city, we do recognise that this has been a particularly challenging time for our city centre. Not just the loss of visitors, but also a huge loss of many office workers and changing habits of our residents. And COVID-19 has significantly impacted on the model of our city centre economy, just as it has every city centre around the world. Offices, restaurants, cafes, museums, retail, theatres, all closed during lockdown periods. All have since been affected by continued essential physical distancing and other restrictions, and of course changes to customer behaviour and the way they interact to boot. Despite the challenges, our city centre will continue to draw people and businesses. We've seen new businesses choose to locate in our city centre over this pandemic, new offices and other workspaces being built. We also know that our culture and leisure venues continue to attract people, especially to larger events such as live concerts, and weekend footfall has remained positive within our capital city. The future of all cities as hubs for people to continue to get access to the things that they don't have within their own neighbourhood is going to continue. But there are significant challenges to city centre that we have to lean into as well. Pre-COVID, we saw a decline in the share of spend in Scottish city high streets as people spent more online. The role of the city centre as a cultural hub is undoubtedly going to continue to be important due to the concentration of our cultural assets, our fantastic museums and other heritage. But although entertainment has obviously taken an impact through the pandemic as well. We do not fully understand the long-term impact and impacts of COVID on our city and on our economy, but we do know that even without COVID, the role of the city centre needed to evolve. It's clear that some intervention will be needed to support the city centre to sustain that vibrant, innovation, inclusive and sustainable place that we all want it to continue to be. And we recognise that any response that we have must be flexible to adapt to different future scenarios we might face. Today, literally today, the Scottish Government will also publish a strategy for city centres, working in collaboration with me and the 6 other city council leaders in Scotland. It sets out key actions to support recovery and continue joint working in areas like investment and also local powers to help make change quicker. And it also says that I should also say that we have already changed planning policy, one of the key elements of that document, to give flexibility for change of use. And that's meant that we've seen former major retail units like Jenner's get replacements very quick to make sure that we don't end up with sustained gap sites that fundamentally undermine our city centre and economy. So we've already taken that action pre-COVID, and it's put us in a strong position. One of the aspects within that is local finance raising, and I feel like it's been a very long time since I mentioned the 2 words that may send shivers down some people in the room, but I hope not the majority, which is tourist tax. Because this is a power which we have continued to make the case for, and it is absolutely still essential. And I want to affirm me and my party's ongoing commitment to implement it, because if we are to raise the investment required, the revenue required to support the continued success of our city and continue to improve the management of how we organise our city and make it a success, we will absolutely need that revenue raiser. We have a strong voice together. It was interesting seeing earlier on the screen that most people in the room said labour supply and operational costs were the main concerns at this point, with around half of people saying Brexit as well. This city has 62,000 EU nationals. We understand better than almost anybody the impact of Brexit on our people and on our economy. The world is not a perfect place, but let's not ignore when we see elephants in the room, particularly elephants in the room like Brexit, that are making labour supply incredibly difficult and having impacts that are raising those costs for you and businesses and people right across our city and beyond. For the last 2 years, I've been guest chairing the Strategic Implementation Group, and that engagement through ETAG has been absolutely essential in making sure that we understand better the problems experienced by you and that the ability for us to work together to solve those problems in partnership. City centres need a strong and vibrant offer to attract visitors, residents and tourists, and they need to feel very welcoming, safe and pleasant. Vacant units can undermine these aims, and we are actively trying to find uses for the spaces that we can see within our city centre, both temporary and long term, which give us an opportunity to enhance our city centre even more as a destination. Thriving cultural and creative sectors can bring vibrancy and even more life to our city centre while enriching the lives of residents and tourists alike. And I'm keen to see landlords work with us and work independently to fill their vacant units now, even if it means them accepting lower rents. It does absolutely no good whatsoever for an asset on a street that is becoming undermined to sit there unused. We need to continue to make sure our city is as vibrant as possible, and those who own chunks of it need to play their role as much as the public sector and other businesses. The pandemic has only further emphasised the importance of the vision that we set out in the 2030 tourism strategy. And as a city, we are keen to ensure that future growth is sustainable and well managed in order to build forward better from the pandemic. If we're able to do that, we need to focus on the themes of the strategy and work together in partnership. And I think it's fair to say that pre-COVID, our sectors were successful in their own right, but now, post-COVID, we need to work together to ensure we're successful together. We know that the recovery cannot lie within the public sector alone. Collaborative partnerships between all sectors, including residents, is clearly crucial as we recover from the pandemic. And taking a true Team Edinburgh approach, we need to build on our existing networks of industry, stakeholder partnerships, and extend these to residents in particular and other stakeholders. Everyone must feel part of this recovery, and if we're to make it a success, then partnerships which help us to take more consistent, consensual decisions on tourism development must be part of that, as well as being able to show flexibility and adapting to changing conditions of the future, of which we've seen so much of over the last 2 years. Residents as well as businesses were instrumental in shaping the 2030 tourism strategy. And again, they were instrumental in helping us shape the Winter Festival's tender, which is currently live, taking bids. That's not an advert. And that's a great example of what there is to be gained through that engagement. More than 8,000 people responded to that Winter Festival's consultation, and feeding in overwhelming support for the events, overwhelming love for the events, but also feeding in helpful suggestions that could help change them, not only to improve the experience of residents within the city while those events are going on, but improving the events themselves and strengthening it for everyone who's attending. I do want to talk a bit about the Forever Edinburgh campaign, which was established in response to the pandemic, and it was brought about in partnership between private and public sector, and has helped, I think, guide through lockdown restrictions and now through recovery. ETAG has led the way on this and developed the concept. Forever Edinburgh was envisaged as a common brand for the city to unite under. The initial focus was on local communities with collaboration, support, and putting out helpful and engaging messages, informing and encouraging residents of Edinburgh how to rediscover their own city in a safe way, inspiring people to use their existing memories to create new ones. Forever Edinburgh, and the latest part of the campaign, The Story Never Ends, was launched last year to target domestic overnight visitors in England and Scotland, and I think we've seen from the stats from Donald that has had some quite considerable success. Aiming to portray Edinburgh as a dynamic storytelling city, because we know it is. We are, after all, a UNESCO City of Literature. But it's more than about cultural events and history. It's about everyone's unique experience down every nook and cranny that this city has and is absorbed in. It's also continues the call for the residents and businesses to think about what their part in Edinburgh's story is and how we can tell that story in a way to remind others of what they love about their city. We've missed a lot during the last 2 years, time with family, time with friends. We've missed loved ones. We've missed school time. We've missed nursery time. That one hurt. I'll be honest, that one really hurt. It's been lovely to hear through all of that people say the words, "I miss Edinburgh." Friends that would have come a few times a year are not forgetting about the experiences they've had in our city. They are counting the days until they can return and have new experiences. A key objective of the campaign was to help raise awareness of Edinburgh's incredible outdoor offering, and as well as the city's neighbouring regions, to help support regional recovery. And again, an important acknowledgement that Edinburgh's importance in the sector is not just within our own boundary, but across the region and actually the whole of Scotland. Thanks to the success of the summer campaign, it's now extended not only to promote during last winter, but during this summer as well, and we've secured additional funding from Visit Scotland to enable us to continue to do that. This will ensure Edinburgh remains at the forefront of people's minds when visiting and supporting the sector even further to recover. Edinburgh is an outstanding contradiction. It's old, it's new, it's local, it's international. It's a city that makes you work hard by climbing to the very top of a volcano so that you can enjoy the tranquil views. It's a world centre of finance, it's a world centre of education, it's a world centre of innovation, of creative industries, of festivals, a world centre of tourism. It is all these things all at once. It is a brilliant contradiction of many, many things. And Edinburgh's history is long. In our city chambers, we have a large wooden board with the names of former Lord Provosts, and it goes back to the 1100s, I think. So our story is a very long one, and it's one of the most interesting ones that anywhere in the world has to tell. But as I reach the end of what I will describe optimistically as my first term as council leader, I know our beautiful capital story continues to evolve every day. We have a bright future as a European capital. Edinburgh's story has a long way to go and will hold people's attention for much, much more time still to come. So in a nutshell, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and just to end with the words, our story will never end. Thank you.